I'm Dr. John. This is your Maintenance Minute. We're continuing our conversation on the 32 storeroom processes and practices, and we're down to this preservation program. Might also be called care for spares. This is essentially the PMs, or the preventive maintenance, that we do on the components that are in storage in the storeroom. And here's what we're after. You may have heard, if you've been in any of my classes, you've probably heard me say this before. When an asset arrives at our facility, it comes with what's called inherent reliability. The way it was designed, built, and installed contribute to what's, again, called the inherent reliability. Our job in maintenance, not necessarily the maintenance department, but our job just for caring for that asset, is to preserve or to guard that inherent reliability. That's everybody's job. Operators have their role to play, of course, the maintenance department, etc. But also let's think about this concept of inherent reliability and understand that when a component comes into the storeroom, a brand new component comes into the storeroom, it also has what's called inherent reliability. The storeroom has a responsibility to preserve or to guard the inherent reliability of the component while it's sitting in the storeroom. Now, sometimes that part could be in there for months, days, certainly months, possibly even years, depending on what it is. So what we're after is guarding that inherent reliability. And the storeroom is responsible for this, right? So, for example, bearings need to be stored vertically, right? And the grease typically that's in a bearing has a shelf life. It could be about 8 years or so, right? So that bearing's not going to last forever. So you practice sort of a first in, first out. Motors, you want to keep those guarded. The shafts especially, keep them out of harm's way so they're not hit by a fork truck or a pallet jack or somebody coming by there and dinging up those shafts. Protect the keyways if they have them. But you've heard about rotating shafts and things on those motors. We're trying to exercise those bearings, because the grease is slumping around those bearings. You want to get that grease up there working in the bearings. That's why you're rotating that shaft, keeping the seals lubricated and everything else, right? Gearboxes, protect the shafts on those things too. Make sure that the service ports for putting oil in those are plugged. Make sure everything's plugged. You may not be able to rotate shafts on a gearbox, depends on sort of what the ratio is. You might need a motor to turn it. But we've got to keep the gearboxes protected too, right? And oftentimes a gearbox is in storage with not the service or the production operation oil in it. It might have some 3-in-1 or machine oil in there just to keep rust from inside. It doesn't have the real production oil in the gearbox. Sometimes it has to be drained in service. Make sure those tags are there, right? You've heard about electronics being kept in dry and cool places, but also make sure they're on a non-vibrating surface. If you took a little vibration pen and put it on some of these metal shelves, you'll see that the storeroom is kind of buzzing along at some harmonic. I don't want to store my electronics on some shelf that's vibrating at some frequency. You want to make sure there's some sort of vibration pad underneath your electronic components. Again, keep those dry and keep them cool and dry. Cylinders, big cylinders need to be stored. I was just in a plant a couple of weeks ago. They had these huge cylinders and they were all laying down, and you could just see those O-rings on the piston head. You could just see those being flattened out. I want to make sure that my big cylinders are stored standing up, so I'm not flattening out some of those O-rings. And then also belts, and you guys have already heard about, don't put belts on pegs and those kinds of things. Trying to keep that normal radius. Anything to keep from creating a stress riser, and anything is what I want to do. Again, I want to stock things in such a way, preserve the inherent reliability, because when that part is called into service days, weeks, months, years later, when it's actually called into service to be put on an asset, I need that component to have its full reliability or mean time between failure, its full service life on it. I can do that by making sure that my parts aren't covered in dust. They're being exercised and rotated. I'm using sort of a first in, first out to make sure I've got the fresh stuff, going in the back, and the old stuff kind of being moving forward and being used up. Again, you guys, if you don't have a preservation program or care for spares program, you need to get one right away. What I'm after is guarding that inherent reliability. And here's something we know from practice on reliability of our assets. We're not accidentally making it better by poor storage conditions. That's not making your components any better. In fact, we're probably degrading. In fact, they're probably, a lot of their useful life is being wasted because of poor storage practices and poor handling practices, right? So I'm suggesting you get a program if you don't have one. If you need some help, call us. We're very happy to help in any way we can, but this is very important. This is a very critical process for the storeroom. I'm Dr. John, and this has been your Maintenance Minute.